In my previous segment, I talked about how in Hollywood, there are many white people starting to speak up, but mostly privately, over fear that they will be canceled in their industry. And my only response is, if you don't speak up, then who are you going to come and cry to when they come for you? You think you're safe not speaking up and pushing back against the extremism from the far left? You're not. You're just biding your time until you are out. A lot of people say, but I have kids, I can't do it. That's fine, I get it. But it's only a matter of time before there's no one left to speak for you. Perhaps you never heard the poem, First They Came For. They'll eventually come for you and there'll be no one left to speak. However, this segment is good news. You see, across the country, people are starting to speak up. And I hope they do so more. Not because we have to agree with who's doing the speaking, but that we want a restoration of the balance in political discourse. Across this country, Blue Lives Matter rallies in part of the country see peaceful protesters and clashes. Now listen, I'm glad to see that Blue Lives Matter people are getting out and rallying, and they're rallying in large numbers, in fact. I'm impressed, I'm inspired, and I'm grateful that people are willing to defend what they believe in. The peaceful counter-protesters, you also have my respect 100%. This country needs a balanced political discourse. And though we may never agree, I love the idea that Americans stand up for themselves and speak to what they believe in. Violent clashes, not cool, not okay, back off. But look, Black Lives Matter people that have been coming out in large numbers, and I have tremendous respect. I do. You might not want to admit it, but it takes a certain level of, I would say, aggression and strength to do what they've been doing. They won't back down. They will scream and they will claw and they will fight and they will get fired. It was a guy who worked for Taco Bell, wore a Black Lives Matter mask. They said, take it off or you're fired. He said, okay, I quit. Well, he didn't say it like that. They fired him, right? The point is, this guy was like, I would rather lose my job than take my mask off. And while I disagree with their ideology, and I find a lot of it, the intersectionalism, to be gross, you got to give it to them. Hey, man, they're standing up for what they believe in, and it works, and they're winning because of it. And that's why I'm so happy to see people pushing back. Because I'll tell you what, the violent rioters and extremists, not a fan at all. Lock them up. The people tearing down statues, not a fan, lock them up. But over in Portland, when, aside from the 40 plus days of rioting, when they just went in the street and laid down and put their hands behind their back, my respect, 100%. Because this country is founded on protest. It's founded on, to be honest, violent revolution. But the basis of this government now is the right to a redress of grievances. Why? I mean, the government wants to avoid, the founding fathers want to avoid the violent clashes. But they recognize they exist. That's why we have the Second Amendment. But I don't like violence. And we want to preserve this country and the union for all of the good things it has done. So when you speak up and peacefully protest, I respect it. I disagree with some of the deception, manipulative tactics. You can argue those are peaceful, but I think they're a violation of people's rights when you lie to manipulate cancel culture, for instance. But it's about time the right has pushed back to restore the balance. Newsweek says, as demonstrations against systemic violence and racism by law enforcement give rise to an opposing movement to defend police, Black Lives Matter supporters held counter demonstrations during Back the Blue rallies across the U.S. on Saturday. Black Lives Matter demonstrators gathered in New York and Florida on Saturday, while Back the Blue protesters held their own rallies nearby. As Blue Lives Matter protesters demonstrated in Florida's Orange Park near Jacksonville, a group of Black Lives Matter supporters participated in a rally across the street. Despite their disparate goals, interactions between the opposing demonstrations were not openly contentious. In New York, tensions were more evident when Black Lives Matter protesters attended a Brooklyn Back the Blue demonstration on Saturday. Videos shared to social media showed at least one dispute between demonstrators became aggressive. Not fun. Not okay. According to CBS New York, the rally drew hundreds of pro-police advocates to the boroughs where people organized a march to support the New York City Police Department. I like it. I'm glad people are speaking up. But I have to wonder, if you worked for, say, I don't know, McDonald's, and you looked out the window and saw a big old group of people waving, Trump flags, why wouldn't you put out a pro-Trump message on Twitter? Because they won't. And I think the issue is that media is controlled by the left. So let's talk about what you can do. And we'll read a little bit more. But first, let me tell you. One thing you can do first and foremost is just speak up for yourself. If you do not, they will still come for you. You will not be safe. There's no future where you can sit back and let this stuff happen. We have learned from history what happens when you refuse. But more than that, you can go into journalism. Yes, it may be difficult. Yes, if you get hired at one of these companies, you are facing an uphill battle because many of these people are far left. But do what they did. They infiltrated. And then once they were in large enough numbers, they pulled off the masks, and now they own it. It's happening at the New York Times. It may even happen at the Wall Street Journal. If you are conservative or moderate or independent or just oppose intersectionalism and you're on the left, then you need to get jobs at these companies and slowly start standing up against it, speaking out in calm ways, or getting more people to work there so we can rebalance political discourse. So far in this country, the imbalance has been so severe that it's mostly been an escalation of the violent extremist left, and nothing's being done about it. I mean, some of these people get arrested, but they're getting released. Over in Portland, the charges were dropped on felony arson and rioting. So this is a good first step, and I'm glad to see it. Now I'm going to tell you what I'm not glad to see and why the speech is so important. If the right doesn't speak up, and they can't on social media, it's very difficult because you can get banned. But if you're not going out there and peacefully protesting, what's left? Violent leftists taking the streets. And then we get this story. Federal officers shoot Portland protester in head with less lethal munitions. The video is graphic and gruesome. I don't know where the dude got shot in the head. He got shot in the face. They said he was a peaceful protester, whatever. I don't know. All I know is he was out during the 40 plus days of violent riots affecting Portland. And one of the officers fired a less lethal round, hit him in the face. And there's a video of him on the ground, totally out of it, gagging up large amounts of blood. It's one of the most brutal videos I've seen from these protests in a long time. I don't like the video. It does not make me happy. I will not laugh. It freaks me out. I don't want this to happen. I want people to have peaceful protests, fine. If you want to peacefully protest for months, you're allowed to do it. This is America, and we have the First Amendment. But the violent riots are escalating. And without a real balance in political discourse, you get the rise of extremists. Because, listen, here's how it works. No one on the right speaks up. The left runs rampant. The local governments say, well, these are the only people who care, so we'll give them what they want. This leads to a dramatic escalation in the far left. This is also why I've been saying Section 230 reform, to help conservatives get back in the conversation when they're being banned. But if you can see a healthy balance between left and right, well, then these courts are going to be pressured to make sure they're being fair. But the right has been chopped off, and now things are starting to skew further and further to the left. Because of this, local governments are just releasing these people. The violence is escalating, and the police return in kind. And you get this video. I'm not going to show you, man. The dude's standing there holding up a sign or something. Someone does something in the fire, and then boom, you see him he just goes down. They're holding him. He's flopping around. He's out of it. He's covered. His face is covered in blood. And I don't know. His skull was fractured. And somehow the blood from his skull, it's like in his throat, and he's gagging it up. Extremely brutal stuff. We need this to stop, okay? But the rioters in Portland won't stop. And when they get arrested, the grand juries release them. This is all stemming from speech issues. When people only hear one side of the narrative, they believe it. If you don't know, if you don't hear it, how can you know? So what happens? The prosecutors say, this person did this. The jury says, well, I've only heard from Willamette Weekly or whatever that far left publication is, that the protesters are the good guys. So I don't want them to go to jail. Free to go. Then they come back and they get more violent. And then you get this. I don't know who this guy is. Innocent until proven guilty. All I know is he got shot by a less lethal round. And as much as I hope he's okay. Apparently he is. He's gone to surgery, facial reconstruction surgery. It was a serious hit to the face. Like, I'm telling you, man, this video is brutal. I hope he's okay. I hope he does well. I hope he recovers. I cannot, however, pass all responsibility onto just the police. When you enter a conflict zone, you have chosen to enter this conflict zone. And I know full well because I've been in dozens of conflict zones. And every time you go in, you know what you're getting yourself into. We need to tone everything down. And in order to do it, we need a restoration of real political discourse. But with social media, first and foremost, it just amplifies the extremes. Then big tech favors one side and they rile themselves up. When two people are only saying back and forth to each other, the right is bad, the right is bad, the right is bad, they keep escalating. Then on the right, you have a separate echo chamber where it's saying the left is bad, the left is bad, the left is bad. Everybody needs to calm down, man. So listen, we have Back the Blue. We have Blue Lives Matter. And the videos, I've seen some of them. They're inspiring. Just another big protest. I like it when people stand up for what they believe in. That, to me, is real strength. I hope that the protests on the right can help to restore some of this. Maybe if these big tech companies can feel the pressure, they'll be forced to reinstate some of these individuals. Maybe with the rise of websites like Parler and the expansion of alternative platforms, these companies are going to realize they're losing market share because of their bias. This may be our path out. Section 230 reform. But it only happens if the Republicans get in. I'm sorry, that's just the reality because the Democrats are not in favor of this. They're just rolling with the far left. Well, I don't know if you're willing to speak up, but these people were. And that's the first step, I suppose. So hopefully people will continue to defend themselves. And that's what I want to see. Thanks for hanging out, everybody. I'll see you all tomorrow at 10 a.m. on this channel. Adios.